The dim glow of the streetlights flickered as Ayaan walked home, his shoulders heavy with the weight of failure. The biting winter wind cut through his thin jacket, a painful reminder of the choices that had led him to this moment. He had once been full of dreams, visions of success, a stable life for his family, a future where he didn't have to count every dollar before buying a meal. But life had been relentless. His father's illness had drained their savings, his mother's silent tears became a daily occurrence, and no matter how hard he worked, the universe seemed determined to push him down. Tonight was no different. Another rejection letter, another door slammed shut. The job he had pinned his last hopes on had slipped through his fingers. He clenched his fists, feeling the cold metal of the rejection letter in his pocket, its presence mocking him with every step. As he reached the apartment, he hesitated. Inside, his mother and younger sister were waiting for him, hopeful that today had brought good news. He had nothing to give them but more disappointment. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The small apartment smelled of lentil soup, a familiar scent that reminded Ayaan of his childhood, back when his father was still alive, back when things were easier. His mother, Farida, looked up from the worn-out couch, her face lighting up for a moment before she caught sight of Ayaan's slumped posture. His little sister, Zara, only 10 years old, ran up to him. "Bye! Did you get the job?" Her eyes sparkled with excitement. Ayaan forced a smile, ruffling her hair. "Not yet, Zara. But I'm trying." His mother didn't say anything, but the way her fingers clutched the corner of her shawl told him everything. She had been praying for good news. He had failed her again. They sat down for dinner, the silence between them louder than any words. Every spoonful of soup felt like a reminder of what they lacked. No meat, no luxuries, just survival. After dinner, Ayaan retreated to the small room he shared with Zara. He lay on the mattress, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. Was this it? Was this all life had in store for him? Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the laughter of wealthier families, people who didn't have to worry about rent, food, or survival. It burned him inside. Why them? Why not me? Tears welled in his eyes, but he blinked them away. He was tired of feeling weak. As he turned on his side, his gaze fell on a crumpled piece of paper on the floor. It was his father's old notebook. Ayaan reached for it, smoothing out the pages. Strength is not measured by success but by the refusal to give up. The words stared back at him. His father had written those words in his final days, urging Ayaan to keep fighting. A lump formed in his throat. He couldn't let his father's words go in vain. That night, he made a silent promise. No matter how many times he failed, he would rise again. The next morning, Ayaan left early. He had no interviews lined up, no clear plan, but he refused to stay trapped in hopelessness. As he walked through the streets, he noticed an old man struggling to push a wooden cart filled with books. Ayaan didn't think twice. He rushed over and grabbed the other end of the cart. The old man, surprised but grateful, nodded at him. "Thank you, son. These books have been with me for years, but my hands aren't as strong as they used to be." Ayaan smiled. "Where are you taking them?" "To the market," the man replied. "I sell books, but fewer people read these days." Something about the old man intrigued Ayaan. Maybe it was the tired wisdom in his eyes, or the resilience in his voice, but as they walked, he felt a strange sense of peace. When they reached the market, the old man handed Ayaan a book. "Take this. It might help you." Ayaan looked at the cover, the mindset of success. He was about to refuse, but the old man had already turned away. That night, as he sat in his dimly lit room, he opened the book. And what he read would change his life forever. Ayaan sat cross-legged on his worn-out mattress, the dim glow of a flickering bulb illuminating the tattered pages of the book the old man had given him, The Mindset of Success. His fingers traced the rough edges of the cover as he hesitated, skeptical yet desperate. With a deep breath, he turned the first page. The world doesn't owe you anything. Success isn't about luck. It's about resilience. The words struck him like a slap. All his life, he had blamed fate, cursed the universe for being unfair. But what if he had been looking at it wrong? He continued reading, each word pulling him deeper. Your circumstances are not your prison. Your mindset is. Ayaan felt a lump in his throat. He thought about his mother's tired face, Zara's innocent questions, the unrelenting weight of rejection. He had let his failures define him. He had allowed every rejection, every struggle, to become a chain around his neck. But what if he had the power to break free? He turned another page, and a handwritten note fell out. It wasn't part of the book. It was scribbled on a small, yellowed piece of paper. Meet me at the bookstall at sunrise. Let's talk. It was from the old man. Ayaan's heart raced. Was this a coincidence, or was fate finally giving him a chance? With newfound determination, he placed the book beside his pillow and lay down, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow might be the beginning of something new. The next morning, Ayaan found himself standing in front of the small bookstall at the marketplace. The old man was already there, arranging books with a calmness that made Ayaan's anxious heart feel strangely at ease. You came, the man said without looking up. Ayaan hesitated, then nodded. I read the book. And the note. The old man finally turned to him, his eyes filled with quiet wisdom. And? What did you learn? Ayaan swallowed hard. That. I've been stuck in my own mind. That maybe I've been looking at my struggles the wrong way. A slow smile spread across the old man's face. Good. You're beginning to see. Ayaan furrowed his brows. Who are you? The old man chuckled. Just someone who was once exactly where you are now. Ayaan was taken aback. You mean, you struggled too? The man sighed, his gaze distant. More than you can imagine. But I learned that life only changes when you decide to change yourself. Ayaan thought about those words. But how? What do I do? The old man gestured toward the books around him. Knowledge is the foundation. But action is the key. You've spent too long waiting for things to get better. Now, you must take control. Ayaan looked around at the books. You mean, read more? The old man chuckled. Reading opens the mind. But true change comes from what you do with that knowledge. Ayaan felt a strange excitement building within him. Then, teach me. The old man studied him for a long moment, then finally nodded. Come back tomorrow. And be ready to unlearn everything you thought you knew about life. That evening, as Ayaan walked home, he felt something stirring inside him. Hope. For the first time in years, he wasn't just surviving. He was searching for something more. But as he stepped into his apartment, reality came crashing back. His mother was sitting on the couch, staring at an electricity bill with trembling hands. Zara sat beside her, clutching her school bag, her face filled with silent worry. Ayaan's heart sank. What happened? His mother looked up, her eyes filled with tears. They're going to cut the power if we don't pay by tomorrow. Ayaan's jaw clenched. He had nothing left. No job, no savings. And once again, he was powerless. He felt anger bubbling inside him. Not at his mother, not at Zara, but at himself. This is not the life I want for them. He took a deep breath. No more waiting. No more excuses. Tomorrow, he would find a way to change their fate. And he would start by learning the lessons the old man had to teach. The weight of the electricity bill sat heavy in Ayaan's pocket as he walked through the streets at dawn. He had barely slept. His mother's weary eyes and Zara's silent worry haunted him. This wasn't just about his dreams anymore. This was survival. When he reached the old bookstall, the man was already there, watching the world wake up with a quiet, knowing gaze. You look troubled, the old man said. Ayaan exhaled sharply. I don't have time for lessons. My family is sinking, and I need money. Fast. The old man didn't seem surprised. So, what's your plan? Ayaan hesitated. I don't know. The old man picked up a book, brushing the dust off its cover. That's the problem. You want to escape, but you don't have a map. Ayaan clenched his fists. I don't need a map. I need a way out. The old man smiled. And what if I told you the way out is in your hands? Ayaan frowned. What do you mean? The old man gestured to the books around him. These pages hold centuries of wisdom. But wisdom alone won't change your life. Action will. Ayaan ran a hand through his hair. I don't have time for riddles. The old man chuckled. All right then. Let me make it simple. He pointed at Ayaan's hands. You are young. You are strong. You have skills you don't even recognize yet. Instead of waiting for a job, create your own path. Ayaan narrowed his eyes. You mean, start something on my own? The old man nodded. Small steps. What are you good at? Ayaan hesitated. He had never thought about it. I'm good at fixing things. Electrical work. Minor repairs. The old man smiled. Then use that. Walk around. Find people who need help. Offer your service. Ayaan's mind raced. But who would trust me? The old man pointed to the first page of the book Ayaan had read the night before. Your circumstances are not your prison. Your mindset is. Ayaan inhaled deeply. Maybe, just maybe, this was his chance. For the next few hours, Ayaan walked through the neighborhood, searching for opportunities. He stopped at small shops, asked homeowners if they needed repairs. Rejection after rejection. Doubt crept in. Maybe this was a mistake. But then, outside a bakery, he saw a frustrated shop owner struggling with a broken ceiling fan. Ayaan stepped forward. I can fix that. The shop owner eyed him skeptically. You? How much? Ayaan hesitated. Pay me only if it works. The man crossed his arms. Deal. With nothing but a small screwdriver he always carried, Ayaan climbed onto the counter and examined the wiring. It was a simple fix. Within 10 minutes, the fan roared back to life. The shop owner's eyes widened. You actually did it. Ayaan wiped his hands. Told you. The man grinned and pulled out some cash. Here. And if you're looking for work, my friend owns a hardware store. He could use a guy like you. Ayaan's breath hitched. His first real opportunity. He took the money, his hands shaking. He had earned this. By nightfall, Ayaan returned home, his heart racing. He handed the money to his mother. She stared at it, then at him. Where did you get this? I worked, he said simply. Her eyes welled up with tears. For the first time in months, there was hope. Zara hugged him tightly. You're amazing, bye. Ayaan smiled, but deep inside, he knew this was just the beginning. The next morning, he returned to the bookstore. The old man was waiting. Ayaan held up the money. You were right. The old man chuckled. I usually am. Ayaan's smile faded. But, what if it's not enough? What if I fail again? The old man's expression softened. Then you get up. Again. And again. Until failure fears you. Ayaan exhaled. No more doubts. No more waiting. He was done being a victim of life. It was time to take control. Ayaan no longer walked with his head down. His steps had purpose. His mind was sharp. Every morning, he set out with his small toolbox, offering his services to shopkeepers, homeowners, and anyone who needed repairs. He fixed fans, lights, leaking pipes, anything he could manage. Each job gave him experience. Each success built his confidence. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just surviving. He was building. One afternoon, as Ayaan tightened a loose wire in a hardware store, the shopkeeper patted his shoulder. You've got talent, boy, the man said. Ever thought about working full-time? Ayaan's heart skipped. A steady job. Security. But something held him back. The old man's words echoed in his mind. You've spent too long waiting for things to get better. Now, you must take control. Ayaan wiped his hands. I appreciate it, sir, but I think I want to try something on my own. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow. On your own? That's risky. Ayaan exhaled. I know, but I don't want to depend on someone else to decide my worth. The man chuckled. Well, I respect that. Here, take these tools. Consider it an investment. Ayaan stared at the small toolbox the man handed him. His own tools. A lump formed in his throat. He had never owned anything like this before. Thank you, he whispered. The shopkeeper nodded. Now go prove me right. That night, as Ayaan returned home, he found his mother waiting. She was holding a letter. Ayon's stomach twisted. What is it? She swallowed hard. Zara's school fees. They're overdue. If we don't pay by next week, she'll have to drop out. Ayaan felt like the ground had been pulled from beneath him. All his work, all his progress, and still, it wasn't enough. Zara peeked from behind their mother, her eyes wide with worry. Ayaan clenched his fists. I won't let this happen. He couldn't. That night, he barely slept. Doubts crawled back into his mind. Was he making a mistake? Should he have taken the steady job? What if he failed? Then, he remembered the old man's voice. Failure is only final if you give up. Ayaan sat up, his jaw tight. I won't give up. He picked up his toolbox, held it close. Tomorrow, he would fight harder. At sunrise, Ayaan returned to the bookstall. The old man was sipping tea, as if he had been expecting him. Ayaan placed the school letter on the counter. I need to make more money. Fast. The old man glanced at the paper, then at Ayaan. Then stop thinking small, he said. Ayaan frowned. What do you mean? The old man pointed at the street. Right now, you're working for people. But what if you built something of your own? Ayaan's heart pounded. Like, a business. The old man nodded. Start small. Print flyers. Offer home services. Make people remember your name. Ayaan's mind spun. Could he really do this? But then he thought of Zara. Of his mother's tired face. And he knew, he had to try. That day, he spent every rupee he had on flyers. He wrote his name in bold letters. Ayaan's home repairs. Reliable, affordable, trusted. Then, he walked through the streets, handing them out, pasting them on walls, slipping them under doors. By nightfall, his hands were ink-stained. His legs ached, but he had never felt more alive. Because for the first time, he wasn't waiting for change. He was creating it. The next morning, Ayaan stood in his small rented room, staring at his last few rupees. His flyers were out. His name was on the streets. But would anyone call? Doubt gnawed at him. Then, his phone rang. His heart slammed against his chest as he grabbed it. Hello? A rough voice answered. You fix electrical work? Yes, I do. My shop's main switch is acting up. Come fast. Ayaan barely remembered the rest of the conversation. He grabbed his toolbox and ran. His first real customer. The shop was in the market, a small tailor's business with a flickering light bulb and a faulty switchboard. Ayaan got to work immediately. His hands were steady, his mind sharp. As he worked, more shopkeepers peeked in. You're the kid handing out flyers, right? One asked. I have a fan that needs fixing, another said. By the time Ayaan finished, he had 3 more job offers. The tailor handed him cash. You're good, boy. Keep working hard. Ayaan looked at the money in his hand. Real, earned money. He swallowed the lump in his throat. Thank you. By the end of the day, his pocket was heavier than it had ever been. More than that, his heart was full. That evening, Ayaan walked home with his head held high. His mother was stitching clothes when he placed a thick bundle of cash in front of her. Her hands froze. She looked at him, then at the money. Ayaan? He smiled. Zara's school fees. Paid in full. Tears spilled from her eyes. You did this. Zara gasped, throwing her arms around him. Bye. You're amazing. For the first time in years, Ayaan saw something in his mother's eyes. Relief. Pride. She hugged him, her voice trembling. Your father would be so proud of you. Ayaan closed his eyes. He had done it. The next morning, Ayaan returned to the bookstore. The old man was there, as always, sipping his tea. Ayaan placed the empty toolbox on the counter. I did it. The old man smiled. I knew you would. Ayaan took a deep breath. I thought success was about waiting for the right moment. But it's not. It's about taking action. Even when you're scared. The old man nodded. And now, you understand. Ayaan looked at the busy street around him. He was no longer just a struggling boy. He was a businessman. A provider. A fighter. And this was just the beginning. Life had tried to break Ayaan. Poverty had tested him. But he learned that struggle is not the end, it's the beginning. That waiting for change is useless, because we must create it ourselves. And most importantly, the strongest people are not the ones who never fall. They are the ones who rise every time they do. So if you're struggling in life, remember this. Your hardships are not your prison. They are your training ground. Rise, fight, and change your story.